Might be a little bit noisy in here today because I have the printer going, printing Enigma parts, and I have my temporary extraction all set up, which is just sucking away some of the fumes from the printer. This little fan's actually quite good. It's got 3 settings and it's actually on the lowest one at the moment, and that seems to be enough to clear the air in here. But I have reprinted the thumb wheel and left a bit more space for the pogo pins to poke through, and also there's a little step in there now so that the where the wires come through will sit flush. I've also reprinted the top cover, which is the part that goes on there. So I was just in the middle of reassembling the rotor, and you can sort of see how this all holds together. There's the hex threaded inserts that just slide into the thumb wheel, and screws either side will clamp all of that together. So obviously this goes in there, the cover goes on top, that holds it, and the ring goes around the outside. So I'll reassemble this new one. The other thing I've done is, because I'm using enameled wire, after I've soldered it, I've just used some, basically the cheapest clear nail polish I could find. I think it was about $4 from a chemist, and I just painted that around the wires and the pins just as a little extra bit of insulation. I don't think I really need it, but it can't hurt. I'll reassemble this now and see what it looks like. So you might be able to see now how that all fits in there. The board sits flush and the pins stick through the other side. So now I need to put the ratchet wheel in place. Again, this will only really go one direction, so you have to make sure you get it correct, and then I can screw all of this together. So with the ratchet wheel screwed in place, it's easier to now fit the top cover to the rotor stack. That's a nice push fit, and I find some flat needle nose pliers are good to sort of squeeze around the edges to get it to sit completely down. When it's all screwed together, of course, the holes will help as well. But the idea is now you can fit the ring in place, and then this will drop through. Obviously making sure you've got the pins in the right place. So the A pin has to go in the A position. So this theoretically is now a finished rotor. It seems to work. I've just noticed that my lettering, my pin positions are off fractionally. So I just need to loosen all the screws and I can rotate that round just a little bit. But I can put this in the machine. This should now fit on the rotor stack like that. And I can put it in the machine and see if it'll rotate, but I can't test it until I've got 3 of these made. So I need to make the other 2 rotors. But that's looking okay. It'll be interesting to see if this is going to be smooth enough for the pogo pins to actually rotate around without getting caught. And I am using sort of round head pogo pins, so hopefully that won't be a problem, but we won't know till we try it. So this is the first test I've ever done with a complete set of pins on a rotor there. So this will be showing the sort of friction that's on the machine when it's normally operating. And of course I've discovered a problem. So the rotor moves nicely, the pins will make contact nicely. Well, I'm assuming they're making contact nicely because I can't actually measure it until I've got, like I say, 3 rotors in there. But they are all touching, they all are rotating around. The problem is a standard key press isn't enough to turn the rotor around. You have to hit the keys pretty hard, and then sometimes it doesn't step all the way around. So you can see it's sort of between. It should pop into place there. Now, it's going to be a bit hard to see. So if I push the key gently, you can see it doesn't move it enough. If you press the key hard, it does. So you have to give them a decent whack, and then sometimes it misses because it gets stuck in a halfway position. So I think what I can do to fix that is modify my rotor teeth to be more of a push. I don't know if I can really film it easily, but no, it's a little bit hard to see. But when the pawls come all the way up, I can actually make the rotor teeth a slightly different profile there, so that the pawl coming all the way up actually pushes it around. So it's a bit hard to see, but the profile is a little bit wrong. It's not pushing, the pawl isn't pushing it all the way around, which is why it works if you give the key a decent thump, because then you sort of kick the wheel around, the inertia carries it around. So that shouldn't actually be too hard to fix. The 3D modeling for this is a little bit of a pain, but hopefully I can. I think I need to add about half a millimeter to basically this face of the teeth, so that the pawl pushes it up a little bit further. So that means modifying my model and reprinting the ratchet wheels. So this is just the reprinting I've done just for trying to assemble the rotors. So this is just in the last few weeks of me playing around to try and finally get the rotors finished. So you can see it takes an awful lot of playing around and experimenting and trying different things to get it to work. But it's stuck. But that's actually looking like it's going to work really well. Like I say, the rotor rotates fairly smoothly. There's definitely a lot more friction on things now, but you can see the side plates here aren't flexing too much. I think I've got the tension right on the rotor stack. It is quite fiddly getting this in and out of the machine. There's only just kind of enough room to do that. The other way I could possibly modify this is to change the shape of the pawls, but then that means taking the whole machine apart again. Plus, I think they're already pretty close to the sort of position they need to be in. Let's see if we can get this. I may need to take a fraction off this shaft again. One of the problems is if the shaft pushes out a little bit like that, you can't get the rotor stack in. It's hard to get it to fit. It's a bit tricky with one hand. There we go. So that's now in. This wheel won't rotate because the pins drop into the holes at the moment. So if we get into a triple wheel step, it's going to lock up. But yeah, we're talking fractions of a millimeter here to make this work. So I'm going to go have a look at that model now. I need to print another one of these, and that'll give me 3 rotors, which is all I need to actually get the machine to work. So despite that minor setback, I'm pretty pleased with that, and I'm pretty sure that's actually going to work once I adjust that I'll probably go ahead and test all the positions, but it looks like it's going to work. I'm still printing the remaining pawl with a slightly thinner head on it so it doesn't hit the letters on the ring. And I've also been digging around playing with the springs that work the little arms that have rollers that run on the edge of the thumb wheel to sort of lock it into place. And these are the springs I were using. They're pretty soft. I found these ones which are much stiffer, but to use them I'm going to have to reprint the little spring holder here. It's quite a simple part, but that'll be the next thing I print. That just sort of screws onto there and pushes up against these little arms. So I think with those in place it should work a lot better. I've also sorted out my ducting so it's not all over the floor. That works a lot better now. Didn't even need to get Harry Tuttle involved. The other thing I tried was putting the single rotor that I have made on this end of the stack and testing how it worked with the reflector, which is over here. And the reflector, it does work against the reflector and it still rotates, so these pogo pins are making contact with the rivets on that side really nicely. And I was actually able to set the machine up so it did the 3 rotor step over, and it did actually do that. So I think that's all looking really good. As I say, I'll finish printing that last pawl, rebuild this for the upteenth time in the last few weeks it seems, and hopefully then that's done. And then I need to continue printing the new rotor parts, and then I can start assembling rotors 2 and 3. The other thing I need to do, of course, is all the wiring. So that'll be another job, because I won't be able to test it without the wiring, even if I've got the rotors finished. Okay, I went inside and I had a look at my model and did start modifying this ratchet on the rotors, and then realized if I did that I was going to rotate them all around a degree basically. The only problem with doing that is then the notch position on the ring would also be wrong, and I'd have to redo those as well. So you can see in there, that's the notch, and that's what actually causes the rotors to step around, or rather the rotor to the left of the one that's stepping to step around. So the notch and the ratchet have to match up. So as a quick experiment I tried just changing the shape of the pawl. It's a bit hard to see down in there. There's not a lot of room in this machine. No, you're not going to be able to see. But I increased changed the shape of the pawl. Basically I raised it 1 millimeter, and to do that I just quickly glued a 1 millimeter piece of plastic to the top of it. There's something I can show this with. So if we look down inside there, that little black piece of plastic is a little piece I glued, super glued, on top of the pawl. The plastic I used is just the end of a cable tie, because that's exactly 1 millimeter thick. And that pretty much works. I do need to modify the edge just slightly, because the motion of that pawl is that it comes up and then goes forwards. So you have to make sure it engages with the edge of the ratchet wheel, and it's just on the limits of that now, but you can see that works a lot better. Because I'm also going to need to do that for the double stepping, or rather the stepping where 2 rotors have to come in, and you can see that isn't working at the moment. It's actually catching on the letters. So these pawls do need a little bit of modifying again anyway. just to make sure the stepping is correct. You can see the middle one there isn't quite in the right position. It has to ride on that grey edge and not catch the lettering there. You can see that one, it's going to catch. So it's not dropping into position and it's not moving the rotors around. Again, this is one of the problems with things being made out of plastic. Everything's a little bit flexible, and you can see that sort of flexed out of position a little bit. So it needs to go in there a bit more. I can probably compensate for that by making it slightly thinner, I think. But it still needs a decent press on the keys to get it to rotate. The other thing I might be able to do is increase the strength on the springs on these, because these are quite weak. If these are stronger, they're going to help pull the rotor around as it clicks into position. But if you give the machine a decent press, the first rotor is actually stepping around correctly now. Let's try it. Yeah, I've missed one then. And then when it misses, because there isn't enough spring tension on these to push the rotor around, you can see I pushed it into position there. Now it'll work again. So that one there missed. Yeah, I missed. That one went a bit too far. So I think a combination of modifying the pawls again, which means stripping all this off again to change them, and making the springs for these a little bit stronger, and I think that may do it. So I've reassembled this with the new pawls on there, and I've also replaced these springs underneath these little rollers with stronger ones, and it's definitely made a difference. It's made it better, but it's still not perfect. So the first rotor stepping is pretty good now. The second rotor stepping is a little bit unreliable, and it's because the pawls are still not quite right. We're talking fractions of a millimeter now, so I need to make them half a millimeter wider and maybe take 0.3 of a millimeter off the height, just to make sure they properly engage. So it's definitely closer, but not perfect yet. The other thing I'm having to do is reprint these little supports. That's what's printing at the moment, because one of them's actually split. So I do have some adjustment in this. So this whole compensator bar can slide backwards and forwards, and that's what lets me set the position of the pawls relative to the rotors. And that helps, but it's not perfect. So it's back to the model, remodel the pawls, reprint them, change them over again. It's quite a long process. I should maybe wait until I've actually built the other couple of rotors, because the spring pressure in there is going to change how they sit, but they're not actually sitting on the pins. So the thing that holds the stack together, there's actually this little raised part in the middle, and that little raised part there rides on that very slight raised part in the middle of the the ratchet wheel. So it's not the pins setting the position. So now I've actually got it under spring tension. It should actually be, these should actually be in the right position. But I'm going to keep tweaking these just to try and get them a bit more reliable. It's just not 100% at the moment. And you can sort of see, maybe, how the pawls don't quite fall into the right place. So a bit more tweaking required. It's the next day now, and I've been doing a bit more playing with this Enigma machine. It's horrible weather outside, so it's a good day to be stuck in the lab. I've reprinted the pawls to just change the shape of those to make them engage a little bit better. Reprinted the supports because one of them had broken, and I've changed the springs again that hold these little arms back that clip into the edge of the thumb wheels. So I've gone from very light springs to these springs to even heavier springs, and that works, but it does cause another problem, which is this bar along the back is now twisting because there's so much spring force on here. You can see that bar's twisting, and it doesn't actually disengage the little wheels fully, so it makes it hard to get the rotors in and out, and that'll take a little bit of redesigning. It's not a problem when the machine is actually all in working position, because this is actually loose in that case. There's no force on it, but having circular bars like this, you've always got the danger of twisting because things can rotate on the circular shafts. But I can redesign that bit later. It has made the stepping a lot more reliable. So it goes with quite a clunk, and it should, saying that, and now that's the second wheel turnover. This has also pointed out something else I've done wrong. When I was assembling this, I've managed to get the rings muddled up. So that's important because the notch position matters. So this rotor is rotor 1. I've wired it up as rotor 1. But if you know anything about Enigma, you'll see that this is causing the second wheel step over to happen between Z and A. Although that's not 100% reliable either. There we go. Which, if you know your Enigma rotors, you'd know that that's actually the step over point off rotor 5. So the reason it matters is you can see the notch for the step over is in different positions on each wheel. So all that means is I've got the rotor 5 ring on the rotor 1 rotor. So it's a good thing I caught that now, because that's exactly the sort of mistake or bug that you would have that would be horrible to try and figure out later on when the machine's all complete. So I need to find my rotor 1 ring, which will be one of these. I can't remember which one it is, and just make sure I swap that over before I forget. But still not 100% reliable. That's definitely better. I should point out as well that the compensator bar here isn't actually screwed down, so it's flopping around a bit. That's not helping. But yeah, it didn't step then. Oh, that's why. It's because this is all loose. So that'll be why. So I'm printing out another thumb wheel very slowly. I think it's printing. Yep. I'll swap over the rotors now before I forget. But it's just a matter of playing with the spring tension in here. I think I need a spring sort of between this one and the previous one I had. Figuring out how to make this a bit more rigid so that it doesn't twist. That could be tricky. I do have quite a bit of room on the back there. I'll look at that. I think slightly softer springs where there's enough spring tension for the thumb wheels to click around, but it's not putting too much pressure on things, will be a bit better. And then it's a matter of doing the wiring and making 2 more rotors, and then I can test it. Okay, one last little quick bit. Changing over the ring wheel so that I've got the right ring with the right turnover notch on the right rotor. So this is the rotor I've built already, rotor 1, wired up for rotor 1, but I've got the rotor 5 ring on here, and you can see the notch is at the back of the machine because the rotor goes in like that. That's where the pawls push it around. The position of the notch indicates, or the notch position depends on which letter is uppermost in the machine when the turnover happens. So you can see it's about 90 degrees. This is where somebody commented the other day about how on a real Enigma machine you're not looking at the top of the rotor, so you have to be careful of that as well. On mine you are, just because of the way I've built it. On a real Enigma, the window is actually looking at this one, not this one, which is the top one. So that's something else to bear in mind. But you can see this is the rotor 5 one because there's the notch and the turnover happens from Z to A. This is the rotor 1 because here's the notch and the turnover happens from Q to R, which is here. So with the way I've constructed the machine, you can see how it's relatively easy for me to swap these around. I can just sort of take the screws out, take this cover off, lift the ring off, and then swap it over.